Oh, hello. People and possums of the internet, Mark with Cardabox Academy here. I have come back from a bit of a break from the YouTube game to bring you yet another Vocal Coach Reacts video. Yes, I had to take a little bit of a break from YouTube in general because, y'all, it was stressing me out. It was stressing me out. I was getting to the point where I was just stressed and algorithm and numbers and views and clicks. And I said, this is not how I want to live my life based on metrics. So I took a little bit of a break, put all my focus on my students, hung out in our Discord community more frequently than I normally am able to, and it was a lot of fun. But now I'm ready to come back and bring you more of the goods that you want, with a caveat, and that is today I'm just doing a song that I want to do. I'm just doing a song that I am solely interested in because it is very good. Now, if you're new to the channel, my name is Mark. I'm the vocalist in 3 bands. The only active band right now is Kardashev, but Neverbreath and Viremia are out there if you want to listen to them. On Viremia, I'm only on glioblastoma. The other stuff was the awesome vocal work of a cool guy named Tony. Now, what I do here is I take the reaction format, I break it down, I try to have some fun with it. We make it as educational as we possibly can. We focus on metal vocals because, in addition to being a vocalist myself, I am a voice teacher, specifically focusing on death metal, deathcore, death growly stuff. I have a small a smattering of clean singing students as well, because I do that in Kardashev. But most of the bread and butter comes from nasty, gnarly toilet bowl types of vocals, teaching people how to do that. Now, today we are checking out Zeal and Ardor. Now, Zeal and Ardor is a band that I have liked for a very long time. I remember the first time I heard Devil Is Fine, blew my mind. They get lumped into black metal a lot. Are they black metal? I don't know. If you like Zeal and Ardor, tell me what you think in the comments below. They certainly have a lot of black metal influence. This song has a ton of it. I've heard just to be aware, I've heard like the first 30 seconds or so. And then I was like, ooh, this is good reaction video. This is good reaction video content. There's no video, but there's a really awesome picture and we're just gonna enjoy it. So, the vocalist and guitarist and I think composer of Zeal and Ardor is, now I pronounce the name Manuel. That's just kind of how I know how to say it. I know he's Swiss American, so maybe if you're from Switzerland, you say it a little bit differently. But Manuel Gagnon is the singer songwriter of Zeal and Ardor, and he's amazing. And I'm really excited for you all to hear it if you haven't heard Zeal and Ardor before. But let's check it out. Black metal, avant-garde, soul, music. Let's have some fun. Zeal and Ardor, Götterdämmerung. I probably said that wrong, which I believe, I'll get to that later. Reaction time. Hit it. Okay, this is about as far as I got the first time I heard it. I heard him singing and I was like, I want to do the reaction video on this. So let's talk a little bit about it. The first thing I want to point out actually is not vocal, although we're going to talk about vocals here in like 20 seconds, is the interesting name and the album artwork. So it's been a long time since I was in school, but if I remember correctly, and from what little Googling I did, and I'm going to say this wrong, I'm sorry, everyone, Götterdämmerung is the last part of a Wagner play. If you know what it is, tell me in the comments below. But it's the last part of a Wagner play, and I think that's when Ragnarok, which is like, again, very foggy memory here, is when Ragnarok, which is like the war between all the, Aesir and the Vanir of Norse mythology fight, and the world is destroyed and things like that. I think that's what that's referencing. Interestingly enough, on the album artwork, we have like the Baphomet hands, right? Like you often see images of Baphomet. Maybe Ludo will throw up a picture of Baphomet on the video here, doing like this, or I get the hands mixed up sometimes, and he's sitting like this. I've always thought Baphomet was just so cool looking, so cool looking. So if you know if you've been listening to this album, and you know about the artwork and the name and how it all ties together, let me know. So now I want to talk to you about vocals. So vocally, a lot of really interesting things going on here. He's working on a very fundamental sound, right? But I love the way he's throwing the sound. And I'm going to assume he does it again later in the song, but a lot of his voice is tossing the syllables out like he's got like a mace, right? And he's swinging it around. And I'll tell you exactly what I mean. So a lot of times when you hear newer vocalists on songs, they are very monotone and they're just kind of moving. They've learned how to do the scream. They know how to do the scream, but they're just moving things in a very simple line, either staccato or legato. And every sound is equal in presence with another. And that can be a really valuable thing to do, right? So there's the sound. And they might be like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Right? They might be there, and that's okay. But it's almost like he's the Joker from Batman, right? The Heath Ledger Joker, because he's got like this Deus Magnus, right? He's starting to articulate with his lips closed on certain words, and then opening up and sort of pushing the words out, and it sounds very cool. That's a thing that you can do, right? If you're at a point in your vocal journey where you've learned how to make the sound, like you can, you can do that, but you're dissatisfied with the way that you're delivering your vocals, channel certain characters. Two of my favorites are Sylvester Stallone, right? And then Mandark from Dexter's Laboratory, or you can call it like a 1950s gangster, right? So like Sylvester Stallone, if I'm doing like low vocals, right? If I'm doing like lows or mids, and here's an example. I say, "Hey, I'm Sylvester Stallone." That's pretty boring, right?
Yeah, I'm Sylvester Stallone.
Kind of boring. If I'm fucking Sylvester Stallone, I'll say, "Hey, I'm Sylvester Stallone."
Hey, I'm Sylvester Stallone.
See, it gets kind of like that punchy sound in it. With high vocals, "Hey, Dexter, Mandark from Dexter's Laboratory." Mandark from Dexter's Laboratory. You hear I was giving that that chewiness to it. Once you've gotten vocals down, play around with just doing different characters in those vocals, because metal vocals are a lot like voice acting. Anyway, let's keep going, and then we'll talk more tangible technique talk, how we actually make some of these sounds. Let's keep going.
God, you knew before I died anyway. They took a night away. They took a night away. They took a night away. Götterdämmerung. Nimm die Säure in die Hand, Ätze die Lügen weg, töte Götter, gib als Gabe nur, was dir nicht mehr bekommt. Deus Magnus, Lügen, Kronion, Deus Magnus, Lügen, Kronion.
Okay, cool. So we've got a little bit of a pattern building compositionally. So let's talk about two things. One is his singing. His singing kind of surprised me here, because if you've not heard Zeal and Ardor before, then you might be unfamiliar with his singing voice, but he's got an awesome singing voice. I think he did a video for the Slay at Home festival that was done a little while ago. But his voice is very rich, very soulful, right? And at the beginning of this, he was kind of letting it go, almost like he was muttering the sound to himself. It sounds like the lyrics are "the writing on the wall" or something like that. And forgive me, I'm just hearing the melody, so I don't have it memorized. But he had very much of relaxed. "Hey, the writing on the walls are done a hill to pay," right? Sort of humming it into the front of his mouth. That's a really good way actually to find a decent vocal tone, right? One question I saw on Reddit recently is, what does my voice even mean, right? What does it mean to find my own voice? And I think that's easier in singing than screaming, because I think a clean voice naturally holds a little bit more nuance than a scream does. Screams, we have to work for our nuance a little bit more. With singing, there's a lot of work for nuance, and I think singing for most people is harder than screaming. However, it carries the natural nuances of your own voice, right? So if we are singing, right, and you're new, you've got pitch down pretty much, and you kind of understand how to move resonance around. You're not a newbie, you're killing it at karaoke nights, but you want to do better, right? One thing you can do is lips together, drop your jaw like you've got a mouthful of water, and don't focus on range extension. Don't focus on anything other than what you're comfortable with. For me, these notes are pretty comfortable. So, right? Just like that. And then if you open up like mums, if anybody's ever taken any clean singing lessons out there, your teacher probably had you doing mums. Right? One of the reasons we do that is to hold resonance in the front. And for a lot of like rock and metal and pop and contemporary, holding the voice in the front of the mouth, activating that frontal resonance, that masky resonance is really important, right? That happens through the shape of the mouth. But if I take this, the writing on the wall and they'll be held to pay, I think that's kind of what he's saying. Hey, the writing's on the wall and they'll be held to pay, held to pay. I'm really right now just kind of speaking on pitch. The writing's on the wall and they'll be held to pay. From there, he started giving it a little bit more presence, a little bit more weight. I don't remember what he was saying. It's looking that way. It's looking that way. It's looking that way. Right? He started getting more into a belt, getting a little bit more power. Really cool. This is where, and this is a good segue into metal vocals. This is where metal vocals and singing become very, very similar. And that's one thing I often try to drive home is that really regardless of vocal style, a lot of the fundamentals are the exact same, right? Like pop, opera, deathcore, whatever. A lot of the fundamentals are very much the same, which are utilizing support to access low pressure to keep our throat relaxed. That's one of the main goals, like with new vocalists that I'm working with, people who have never screamed in their life, or even people who have been on a couple tours, right? Can we do this with our neck relaxed? 99.9% of the time, that is the correct answer. So you'll notice that when I just did that, like, kind of shot in the dark, hey, it's looking that way, oh, right? You hear that my voice is very open, right? The reason I'm able to do that is because I am utilizing a counterbalance between pressure and resistance to pressure in my vocal folds, right? So this is often what's referred to as compression, right? Compression isn't one just specific technique. It's an interplay of air between two places, between the generation of the airflow, which is going to be our diaphragm pushing up on the base of our lungs, right? And then whatever is getting in the way of that airflow. If you think about it, if I, even do like, right? My vocal folds are partially obstructing that airflow. Now, we don't want to think about it as the vocal folds holding the air back, because then you get too much subglottal pressure, which is pressure underneath the vocal folds. And that's a great way to strain your vocal muscles, right? And potentially cause vocal damage. So for the majority of vocal technique, even though we are utilizing pressure, we don't really feel a lot of it underneath our vocal folds, right? So step one, we just learn breathing. We learn breathing. We learn how to take a breath nice and low. Easy, only like 75% full, right? Then we learn about concepts such as holding the ribs out, retaining inhaled posture, and crescendoing, right? Starting, hey, way. If you're struggling a lot with neck tension, this is a great exercise for you. Start low and relaxed. Hey. And as you lift in your volume and as you sort of like, that crescendo, increase the volume and then glissando through those notes, one thing you can focus on is keeping your neck relaxed and putting your mind on your abdominal muscles. Do you feel squeeze all around like you're wearing like a wrestling belt, right? Even some downward pelvic floor sensation when you're reaching the top of that space. And who cares how high you're going? Nobody cares how high you're going right now. Now, I mentioned that this is where singing and metal vocals come into play. So almost every metal vocal he has done has been the same technique, right? But it sounds very nuanced and varied. Part of that is because right now there's a lot of gain on the metal vocals. So some of the crunch you're hearing is coming from a lot of gain. He might have a couple exciters on there. Now, he is not cheating. There are many videos of him live sounding awesome. And you can tell that they're not using a whole lot of live effects. It's okay to put effects on your metal vocals, people. Like, I don't know why we're still having a conversation about this sometimes, but if you want your voice to sound extra crunchy, gain it up. I don't care. Right. But most of what he's building on is some sort of placement of false chord. Right now, what does that mean? What does that mean? False chord, placement of false chord. What the heck is all this about? Well, if you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, you know that me personally, I do a lot of false chord stuff. Although I move into other areas as well, where we have more of an arytenoidal sound, or maybe there's a balance, a little bit of fry moving into the arytenoidal sound. But that's for another video. With our false chord vocals, we achieve these by being relaxed. And part of the reason that most people are able to do false chords first, you don't have to, but part of the reason that a lot of people are able to do false chord first is it builds on sounds we already make. Like if you're my age or older, you remember the MySpace days where kids with emo haircuts were like, all right guys, so here's my vocal tutorial. You're just gonna sigh, right? And that's actually a pretty good way to start. From there, those videos got a little funky and off track, and I know a lot of us hurt ourselves on those videos. But taking this relaxed, oh man, I had a crazy day. That's crazy. Right? That's a really good place to start. Now, what a lot of those old MySpace videos didn't tell you is what you do after this. Which is exactly what I mentioned about the breathing, right? You learn to squeeze your abdominal muscles, not crunch down, right? You activate the abdominal muscles to lift your voice up. And then all of my students, when they get this, they always describe to me that it feels like the sound is coming up and over, like the scream is generating kind of at the back of the jaw and then moving up along the soft palate and almost out of the cheekbones, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? Because a lot of this,
no.
That's a very old foundational, or I should say a very basic foundational false chord noise. It sounds low. So why is it not coming out of here? Why am I not dropping my larynx and squeezing my throat? Well, the reason for that is because we're already getting some depth of sound, because your vocal folds, don't quote me on these numbers because it's been a long time since I looked at this, but for most people with vocal anatomy similar to mine, your vocal folds are going to vibrate at, I think, like 110 to 120 times per second, might be more. And so we get a much higher pitch, right? Because there's just more vibration. Think of a very thin guitar string, like the high E versus the low E. I'm not a guitarist, so, but one of those strings is thicker and vibrates slower, right? And one of those strings is thinner and vibrates faster. So just by virtue of the fact that the false chords and the arytenoids above, which is where we're getting actually a lot of distortion, are bigger and vibrate slower, right? We're going to get lower tones. This is how it works, right? The next thing is that we can open our mouth to create low tones. Now, you're probably watching this and thinking, Mark, he's doing mostly highs. I know. Wait, just walk with me for a bit, right? So we get this sound. Is it a low? Is it a mid? Is it a high? Who cares? It's comfortable, right? Right? Then after that, we start thinking about places in our voice. And usually this is 1 or 2 lessons for me to fully kind of like get you to understand it. Not because it's incapable of being understood. It's just because these are abstract things that we're not used to doing, right? Anybody can learn how to do this. Doesn't matter. Anybody can learn how to do this. But I take this, if I scream, you hear that's coming from my speaking voice, right? Okay, think about this. Earlier, I was like, I'm just singing on or speaking on pitch, which I do think that sometimes that's a bit of an oversimplification, but it's a good place to start. So I'm singing on pitch. I'm speaking on pitch. Now, I'm growling at the same place that my speaking voice comes from. What other places can my comfortable speaking voice come from? Can it come from here? Hey, whoa, wow, that's crazy, man. Like, yeah, that was last Tuesday. Like somebody asks you a question. Hey, when was it that we went to the fair? Oh yeah, that was last Tuesday, right?
Oh yeah, that was last Tuesday. Yeah.
Now, a lot of people will call this a false chord high, and I think that there's some merit to that. Once it gets a lot higher, I don't know why I'm so burpy, folks. I'm sorry. Once it gets higher, I think we move away from the false chord realm, and now we're using structures such as the palatopharyngeal folds and things like that to get really high. But essentially, if you're trying to get high, stop trying to get high and focus on taking your mid or your low and making it a little bit higher. right? And go from there. Anyway, I just talked for a long time, but that's what I do. So let's pick it back up. I'm going to go back like maybe 10 seconds.
The cinders on the floor will take the pain away. Guys, you know before I die in any way. They took the night away. They took the night away. They took the night away. Can't touch me. It's exciting. The sky, so we will fight. We'll scream your name to rule again. How can we believe their lies when the fallen will not
Oh, is that it? Okay, cool. We're actually going to go back and probably listen to one more thing. But okay, so a couple of things that were really cool that are worth talking about. So I want to find it. But in his singing, he started kind of in the front with that humming sound. Hey, the writing on the wall, and they'll be hell to pay. And then he opened up and he kind of darkened his voice a little bit, right? He brought in some of those warmer, richer tones. And a lot of the way that we do that, don't overthink it too much. Just think about making more space. Hey, hey, One, the more bright tone in the front. My tongue is slightly raised. My soft palate is still up, but not quite as far, right? And then if I take that, right? It's all the shape of the mouth. And oftentimes what I find is new vocalists singing or screaming, they think that they really have to exaggerate these. And while for screaming, that can be pretty valuable because it sounds cool, for screaming, generally, it's not as dramatic as you think you need to, right? Drop the jaw, raise the soft palate, right? And we can just kind of fuck around with noise. Now, obviously, you don't want to be that dramatic in your singing because you'll sound kind of like a goober. But I love the dynamics between, starting off forward and a little bit more hummy, and then opening up and adding a strong power. And that's kind of a thing you can think about as a vocalist as well. Like, okay, I want to add, the song is building up, so I would like to build up. Do I need a bright kind of like poppy build up, or do I need something more open, right? So I could be like, oh yeah, or oh yeah, oh yeah, whoa, hey, right? We could do it either way. Let's get back to the screaming though. So he kind of, interestingly enough, got more of that like steady, repetitive staccato sound that I was talking about. So he has a lot of nuance at the beginning. Then he gets a little bit more steady and just sort of is punching these out. Ta, 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 right? Really works pretty well on the outro. Now, you'll notice that with a lot of his screaming, his jaw, you can hear that his jaw is kind of closing, almost like he's screaming through grit teeth. That's going to be kind of difficult for a lot of new singers because that's going to change the air pressure in the mouth, and it's going to be hard to manage. You're going to get kind of pressure going back, going forward. So I would say don't start there. But one thing that you can do is you can take if you want to practice doing this, right? You can take like an eh vowel and then slowly close it. So like, you'll notice that when your jaw is closed, you need a little bit more pressure from down below. again, keeping the neck relaxed, keeping the distortion up high, that's not a problem. It's not something you need to worry about, okay? So, again, we have like a
Yeah! Götterdämmerung!
right, like we get those kind of cool sounds. Anyway, I was gonna listen to it again, but we're almost at 30 minutes, and I do actually have to run here pretty soon. Got a busy life, so maybe we'll just call it here. But yeah, great song, excellent screaming. If you haven't heard Zeal and Ardor, check them out. Not all of their songs are this heavy. A lot of them have like, you know, influences of like soul and like almost like a gospel feel sometimes, which is really cool. It's great stuff. So Zeal and Ardor, Götterdämmerung. Sorry if I'm saying it wrong. Feel free to @ me in the comments. But beyond that, I appreciate you hanging. Check us out on Patreon if you really like the content. We do have voting every month and raffles to win vocal evaluations and other cool things. We hang out every Friday. Last Friday's hangout was like almost 17 hours. I wasn't there for the whole thing, and people were kind of in and out, but it was a pretty good time. And that's all I can think to say right now. So as always, many thanks, much love. I'm out.